Hello, welcome to the Jellyfish Journals. My name is Susie, and I am ready to update my reading journal for everything that I read in the month of October. So, the first place I always start is my little library card in the pocket where I write down any books I've loaned out. Then on the back, I have my swatch chart. So, I've got all my markers ready there on the right. And my first stop in my reading journal is to update my 25 and 25. So in October, I was able to knock two books off this list. The first book was The Cherry Robbers, which was actually a Christmas present from my sister-in-law. And that'll give you an idea of how long sometimes it takes me to get to the books that I have. So I have really been dying to read this. So I knew last year it was definitely going to make it on my 25 and 25. Otherwise, it might have actually been bumped till next year. So I was just explaining to my husband that this list is kind of like the fast pass list, I guess, if you're a Disney fan. It kind of helps skip the line of books that may have been sitting on my TBR a little bit longer. The other book that I read in October from my 25 and 25 was The Murmur of Bees. If you've been following my channel at all, you know that I am a sucker for any books that are about bees or have bees in the title or are on the cover, and this book was no exception. Thankfully, this book was phenomenal. 5 stars. It was so creative. It was kind of like a mix between historical fiction and fantasy. I highly recommend. Up next is my reading log. Normally I fast forward through this part, but this video already was not very long. I think as the year goes on, there are less things to update on each page in the journal. So the videos are getting a little bit shorter and it's a little easier to keep it within my 30-minute budget, which is how long I like my videos to be, is about 30 minutes. I was able to read 12 books in the month of October. One of them was a short story on my Kindle. It looks like Amazon now gives out a free bonus short story every month. And so as opposed to those piling up and being read in order as well, or needing to read all of those at once, I usually try to read one digital short story a month just to keep knocking those out. Most of my books this month were actually 4 and 5-star reads. The only 3-star read I had was The Housemaid's Wedding. I did listen to that one on audiobook. I have read all of the other Housemaid books. I've enjoyed all of them. I just don't know if the story translated well as a short story. I think it could have stood alone as its own book, which I guess technically it does, but I guess I mean a full-length novel. I was pretty sure that buying a physical copy of that book, actually, I don't think I've ever seen a physical copy of that book, but I knew I wouldn't want it on my shelf. It was going to be smaller and not, I don't know, aesthetically as pleasing. I don't know if this all makes sense, but I guess I didn't see the need to actually purchase a physical copy of the book, so I did listen to it on audiobook. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It was odd and I don't know, it didn't give the same vibes as I feel like the other Housemaid books gave. I finally read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I loved that book. Oh my goodness, the layering and the intertwining of the characters, I just thought was so brilliantly done. I had a lot of fun with that. I've also started to embrace a little of my romantic side with Emily Henry. I honestly don't care about the romance in her books, but the humor she puts in her books, that's what's drawing me back. Moving on to my reading challenge, this is the one that I'm currently following through STORYGRAPH. This is the 2025 Easy Reading Challenge. Each month has a prompt. I wrote the prompt on the left, and as I read the books, I put the color cover on the book to indicate that I have read it. I have signed up for the 2026 version of this reading challenge. Moving on to my book bracket. In the month of October, The Murmur of Bees was the clear winner for me. I am not exaggerating when I say I just thought that book was beautifully written. All right, on to my books read graph. I have, like I said, read 12 books in the month of October. So I'm going to go ahead and color in those boxes. It still kind of bugs me a little bit that I accidentally did 2 green whatever bar graphs next to each other, but whatever. And the number of pages I read, I think, was like 38,000 something. So I'll make my little dot there. And I think I've mentioned in my other video that for my 2026 reading journal, I am downsizing both of these charts since there was a lot of wasted space at the tops of both of these pages. I won't have to worry about that anymore. I usually give this just a minute or so to dry, just so I don't end up with a big black dot on the opposite page. And now I'm going to move on to my dates finished. On this page, I mark off every day that I finished a book, whether it was print, digital, or audio, based on the key at the top of the page. If I finished more than one version or format, I should say, of a book, then I just kind of half that box. This is my absolute least favorite spread in my reading journal. I don't know. I think in the end, after doing this for nearly a year, it just doesn't matter to me when I finished these books. And it was kind of a fun chart to do, definitely a fun chart to create. Like, I think it looks really cool, but it is not going to make an appearance in my 2026 reading journal. And at the end of this video, I will link a video of what I have kind of processed after doing this journal for a year, as far as what worked in this journal, what didn't work. And part of that is what you see me working on right now, which is my year published garden. So I am confident, because I triple, quadruple checked at the beginning of the year, that I put down 140-ish flowers on this page. I am so sure I did, but I have not read 140 books, and somehow I have run out of flowers. So every month now, I have to go in and add little flowers or leaves just to fill in the space. Not a big tragedy, but I just kind of wish that it was ready to go and I didn't have to keep double checking this. I guess in the end, it's kind of cool because it's now filling in all those little spaces. So as I tend to do, I'm just going to count it as a positive, a happy accident. But on this chart, for each kind of span of years, some are a span of 40 years, some are a span of 10 years or 5 years, I just assigned a different color. So the older the book, the larger the time span, and the more recent the book, like 2020 to 2025, the smaller the time span. But basically, whatever year the book was published, I just color a flower that color. And the idea is at the end to see which colors are more predominant. I am changing this up for next year. Next year, I believe I decided to go ahead and do a graph where I just color boxes. One of the things I noticed was no matter how much I tried to read older books, it just seemed like whatever I picked up wasn't quite as old as I thought it was. And I ended up with more 2020 to 2025. Moving on to my bookshelfie, this is one of my absolute favorite spreads. At the beginning of the year, I pre-wrote all the titles of the books on the spines, and those books are my STORYGRAPH Reading Challenge books, my 25 and 25, and then I went through and I just started with the books that had been on my TBR the longest and filled in the rest of these. And that's my way of making sure that those books don't sit forgotten on my shelf for a long time. Now, next year, I'm doing 25 and 26, and I'm doing an extra reading challenge. So I'm still haven't quite thought through how I want that to look, but I love having the titles pre-written on the spines. It's just very satisfying, and there's no rhyme or reason to the colors. I just kind of spread the colors out so that at the end, the shelf is kind of balanced and aesthetically pleasing. It's just so much fun, and I can't wait for you guys to see my space jellyfish themed bookshelf for 2026. All right, genres read. As always, I read quite a few thrillers in October. That is my favorite genre. And a couple of mysteries, I think. I try to mix up the genres that I read, so I try to read a little bit of everything. I did notice that a lot of the books I read don't necessarily fall in one of these categories, so I am also rethinking that for next year, how I want this page to look in my spread. But I think overall this has been a lot of fun to do too. I don't regret all the space at the top because that one genre thriller would need more, but I think I'm going to rethink it just for the sake of not having so much wasted space. On to new books. This month, most of my new books came from the library. My library has a little area where you can purchase books, and I ended up walking there a couple times to get my steps in for October and found some good books there. So, added that in. My 2025 in review spread, oh my goodness, guys, it's so exciting and satisfying to see this spread being filled out. I am near the end, and this is really exciting because that means in December I can finally fill out the right-hand side where the totals are. That's going to be really fun to do and see this completed. I did read 12 books. I read 38,000, sorry, just kidding, 3,835 pages. 5 of the books I read were print, 2 were digital, although one of those was the short story I mentioned before, and 5 of them were audiobooks. So I tend to get through more audiobooks because I go for long walks. And in October, I participated in this thing with work where it was called Walktober, and I was trying to hit 10,000 steps a day, which meant a lot of time in audiobooks. I only had 6 new books, and I know that still sounds like a lot, but if you look up on my chart, you'll see I'm like stuttering as I say it because I'm looking it over too. That's a pretty low number for me. And 0 books did not finish. I just made a little note that I tried not to get too many new books. I knew November was coming. It's actually my birthday today, and I knew I'd be getting some books for my birthday, and Christmas is coming up, and so I tried to tone it down a little bit in October. For my Read the World spread, I read a book in, I believe it was Wisconsin, and I think here I'm double checking. I am not going to lie. I am American, born and raised and bred and all the things, and I still get mixed up with Minnesota and Wisconsin and Wyoming. I don't know what it is with those 3 states, but I wanted to double check before I colored it. I did read a book that took place in Wisconsin. The Murmur of Bees took place in Mexico, which was pretty satisfying to color in this entire country down here at the bottom. It definitely added a huge chunk of color to my spread. And I think there was one more book that I read, and I'm trying to remember now, but that might have been I know what it was. I did read a book. I read Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And part of that takes place in Antarctica, but I did not put Antarctica on the spread, so I'm just going to leave that alone. Where'd You Go, Bernadette also did technically take place over a holiday. It wasn't a Christmas book, but part of the story has to do with the character being gone over Christmas. So I did fill that in. All I have left is a book set in the fall and a book set in the spring. And now this is satisfying. I am finishing up my Read the Rainbow. Somebody left me a message in the comments and reminded me that Sunrise on the Reaping, probably one of my favorite reads of the year, was a purple cover. And don't ask me how I missed that, but yay, I finished that spread. No recommendations, can't do book awards yet, so on to thriller tropes. Ignore this if you don't want to know, but I did consider The Guest List by Lucy Foley to be a book with a conspiracy, so now I just need a book with creepy kids. I did not read any classics or have any DNFs, so now it's on to my new books, which you can see this is a little ridiculous, how many flaps I've had to add. I definitely acquired way more books than I anticipated I would this year. Now, in all fairness, I do feel like I'm starting to slow down on acquiring new books, which I think is a good thing. I say that knowing that earlier this week I acquired 13 new books for my birthday, and I just went and got one more today on my birthday. My best friend, my teacher bestie, which work besties are not the same as your normal besties, I will say, but she's wonderful. And she actually did the Barnes & Noble challenge with me. And we went to the store and she gave me, 3 minutes to look around and 90 seconds to grab whatever I wanted. I don't like that challenge, guys. I started instantly getting nervous and worried that I would miss something important. I don't know what happened to my brain, but not being able to look for a sale, not being able to make sure I was picking up the best version of that book, all of those things were stressful. But I did end up with 2 really good books from her. All right. The next step is to just go ahead, and those are all of my annual spreads. So I'm going to go ahead and put my swatch card back in the pocket and get those out of the way, because now I am going to move on to all of my October spreads. And this is where I just focus on the month of October as opposed to all the stats that I've accrued over the year. So right now I'm probably off camera pulling out those 3 markers that I used for these spreads, because each month, whatever theme I have chosen, I have like a little, I don't know, rough draft journal, if you will, where I swatch out colors and things. And I use those colors throughout those spreads just to keep it looking cohesive. So hopefully I've got that now. Sorry, I'm trying my best not to spend time editing this too much since it is my birthday. I'm kind of trying to knock this out off my to-do list. My first spread every month are my up next books. These were the books that I was determined to get through in that month. And in October, my goal was to get through 5 books. And at first I thought that was super doable because I had fall break and I knew I'd have a little time off. However, my mother-in-law passed away in October, right at the beginning of fall break. And because we traveled to go see family and just my time was spent a little differently than planned, I ended up staying up very late on October 31st to finish Shanghai Girls by Lisa C. I am not a very late night reader. I'm the reader that lays in bed, and if I'm tired, that book will smack me in the face. I don't know how these people stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning finishing a book, but I did manage to finish it before midnight. Although I'll be honest, if I finished it at like 12:30 or 1, I was still going to count it for October because, hello, I was still awake. Kind of wish I hadn't done Shanghai Girls the way I did. I was trying to be creative with the way I colored in the cover. It's hard to read from a distance, but up close, I can still tell what it is. Anyway, all that to say, I was determined not to have a single month where I did not finish the up next books, because guys, it looks so pretty when they're all colored in and they match the theme, and I didn't want to just have one blank white book. And not that there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with not finishing the books, but my brain was like, I knew how far I'd made it into the book. I knew it was doable, and so I just kind of pushed myself to actually do it. I started coloring the dead husband all purple and then realized I would end up with only 1 pink book because I knew the bottom book I did not want to be pink on top of that pink glitter washi. So I decided to just make the middle of the dead husband a pink stripe. I think it's actually kind of fun now, so I'm glad I did that. I think that's been tricky, is trying to make the books look interesting on this page and not just be solid colors. My reading challenge book for the STORYGRAPH Easy Reading Challenge was The Dead Husband. The prompt was to read a book with an ugly cover, and I really did go through my entire TBR, and that was the ugliest cover I had. Again, ugly covers, that's subjective, but I think that's kind of what makes the prompt a lot of fun. So at the top of this page, I just kind of write a little blip about what I thought about the book, and if I remember right, what I basically wrote down is that this book was pretty unremarkable. I think I gave it 4 stars. My initial reaction after I read it was, wow, that was really good. But I don't remember a single thing about it now. So between the time span when I finished this book at the beginning of October and filling out this journal, which is sometime in November, that book kind of lost a little oomph for me. On to my new book spread. I love this page. I love that I made this little door, or I guess the little window opens. And all I'm going to do in here is just list out the titles of the 6 books that I acquired in the month of October. And I just try to make this page a little fun every month and a little bit different. On the right-hand side, that's where I put my top reads for the month. And I will be honest, I don't love that page. I had a plan for that page with all the circles on it, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if I accidentally glued something down in the wrong spot or what, but I ended up gluing the circles down in a way that looks a little too organized to me. It doesn't look as random as I was hoping. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but it is probably one of my least favorite decorated spreads in the entire journal. This is where I glued down my top 3 books because even though The Murmur of Bees was the clear winner, there were other books that just were awesome that I would recommend, and I'm going to go ahead and just glue those 3 down. I also, in the making of this page, forgot to leave a space where I put the star rating. I debated not bothering with it because every month my top reads have always been 5 stars, but I wanted the book to be consistent, so I went ahead and just doodled it in there with the purple marker. That was my little draft journal you saw there on the left that poked in for just a second. Sometimes I double check my thinking to make sure I'm on the right track. All right, moving on. This is my October stats page, and this is just where I record the books read, the pages read, how many books I acquired, whether the books I read were print, digital, or audio, and the number of books that I did not finish. And for this month, I loved that giant Dragonfly paper so much that I decided to just go ahead and make the whole page that paper. I put that shiny, shimmery washi tape around the border, and then I just created a little pocket on the side that is where I would tuck in this little card and write those totals in there. So as I said, I read 12 books, 3,835 pages, 6 new books, 5 print, 2 digital, 5 audio, and 0 DNFs. I did have somebody comment once that the number of pages read doesn't really matter, and I totally agree with that. Like, thinking that through, it really doesn't, especially if you're reading on a Kindle or you're reading a different version of the book, or, there's so many factors that go into that. But I'll be honest, I like making the little line graphs, so that's the only reason I even bothered to record it, because the line graph is a lot of fun. And on to my last spread. Every month, my final spread is always the books read, and this is where I will glue down all the covers of the books that I read that month, and it's really just kind of a fun little museum-y piece of, hey, this is what I read. I like also laying them down in the order that I read the books. Sometimes that's kind of fun to look back and see, how I broke up a run of thriller books with a Emily Henry romance, or how I threw in a fantasy in the middle of the month just to shake things up. So I like putting them in order, and I like laying them down in there. It takes a little bit of time to kind of shuffle them in a way where they're all going to fit. October seems to be a month where I had a lot of giant ephemera on the page. I don't always, and so it was a little bit tricky to make them all fit. I don't number them or anything. It really is just left to right what's in order. And again, normally this is a part of the video that I would just kind of fast forward through and not have you watch me glue everything down. But I feel like once in a while it's good to see the entire authentic process of everything. And like I said, this video is already under 30 minutes, which is pretty bizarre for me. So I didn't want to make it any shorter than that. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I feel like 30 minutes is a good length for a YouTube video, but if you would prefer the videos to be shorter or longer, leave a message down below in the comments. I don't think I've ever asked that before, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of curious. Let's see. Okay, so Be Mine was a thriller. I think I audiobooked that one. That one was kind of interesting. Where'd You Go, Bernadette was, honest to goodness, it was just a pick because the book had an aqua cover and I was desperate to fill that Read the Rainbow spread. Normally, I don't tailor my reads to my spreads, but I honestly had no clue what I was going to do for that. And since my audio and digital books are not on any challenge lists that I do, it seemed like a good opportunity to fill that hole. If you know me at all, yes, I am really annoyed that the housewarming and Murmur of Bees are crooked. I think at some point I do try to go fix it, but I'm trying out these new nails that are like stickers, and my nails aren't as thin as they were to pick off the paper the way I used to. Yeah, there I go. And I think I even tried an X-Acto knife, which is my go-to now to lift things, and it was already too dry to bother with. So I just had to make the decision I was going to leave it. So, bummer, but I'll have to be more careful next time. The last thing that I always do on my books read page is to put down how many, whether I read it in audio, digital, or print, and the star rating for each book. It's just a really quick reference because sometimes I won't remember the title of a book, but I'll remember what the cover looked like. So as I flip through this, if I remember, oh, it was a book with a yellow cover, it might be a little easier to find it and then immediately see what format and what star rating I gave it. But that's pretty much going to do it for my November update. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you want to follow along for my 2026 reading journal. I am so grateful that you guys are here and you've watched, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.